We're going to do a quick introduction to using spreadsheets with Google Sheets, and then talk about how we can enter functions to calculate the mean, median, mode, and standard deviation for a data set in Google Sheets. So we're going to take a look at answering question 2 from the slides, which is asking us to calculate, amongst other things, the standard deviation for the length from a sample of 10 lizards. So over here, we've got Google Sheets open. So you open Google Sheets through a browser. Once you have a blank Google Sheet open, what you can see is this consists of a bunch of boxes that we call cells in the spreadsheet. And we describe the location of each cell by saying what column is it in, A, B, C, D, and so on, and what row is it in. So for example, this cell that's in blue is in column B, row 4, so we would say this is cell B4. This is cell A6, and we can change our location by clicking on different cells, or you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move around from cell to cell. So first, we can enter text into cells, we can enter values into cells, and we can enter functions that tell Google Sheets to do some calculations. So in cell A1, for example, let's enter the text length in centimeters. So I just click on cell A1, type in the text that you see here, and click return, and that enters that data, that text, into cell A1. And now coming down column A, we're going to enter each of the values in each of the 10 values in our sample. That would be the sample over here, from 5.3 up to 7.2. So I enter 5.3 in cell A2, hit return, 6.3, hit return, and so on. So I'm going to jump down this list. Okay, so here I actually made a mistake. I did this on purpose, of course, where I only entered 2 measurements of 7.1, where the actual data set should have 3. So if you make a mistake in a cell and you want to overwrite what is currently in it, I just click on cell A10 and I type 7.1, hit return, and that replaces what was in the original cell, and I can enter 7.2 in the cell below. If you ever want to delete contents from a cell, then you just click on the cell and hit delete or backspace, and that will delete the contents. Okay, so now we've got our 10 lengths listed down column A. So over here, I'm just going to type some text to indicate what it is we're going to be calculating in each of these cells. So in column C, I've got mean, median, mode, standard deviation entered. So when we're working with Google Sheets, the way that we enter formulas is we start with an equal sign. So I'm going to come back to the notes, and here are the formulas that are used in Excel, and we'll see that the formulas used in Google Sheets are almost exactly the same. So over here, what I want to tell Google Sheets to do is take these 10 values and calculate the mean of those 10 values. So in cell D2, I could choose to do this anywhere, but here's where I want to see the mean. I begin by typing an equal sign, and this tells Excel, normally I type stuff into a cell, I hit return, and you show exactly what I type into that cell. By beginning with an equal sign, this is telling Google Sheets that what I want to see in this cell is the output of the function I'm about to enter. So in this case, the function to calculate a mean is called average. So I type average, and this is not case sensitive. So you could type this in uppercase or lowercase, does not matter. So this is the function I want to use. I put a left parenthesis to indicate we're going to start inputting numbers into this function. And now I could either type out the numbers themselves as a list separated by commas, or I can enter the cell range where these values are located. And since I've already entered the values into the spreadsheet, I could just say calculate the average of the cells of the values located in cells A2 to A11. So I type A2, and now I can see that that cell has been shaded in kind of an orange here. I can put a colon, so if I have a whole list of cells next to each other, this colon says take all of the numbers that start in cell A2 and go all the way down, in this case, to cell A11. Now I can see that those 10 cell locations are highlighted in orange. That's exactly the 10 values in my data set. And so now I close off this function with a right parenthesis, and this is saying calculate the average of all of the values located between cell A2 and cell A11. And when I hit return, what I see is the output of that function, which is 6.67. So this means the mean of this data set is 6.67 centimeters. The median, we enter much the same way. We begin with an equal sign. The function for median is called median. Usually these functions are kind of named pretty intuitively. And now I want to calculate the median of the same cell range. So another way that you can enter these cell ranges, we could type them in like we did in the previous one, or I can click on the actual cell. So I've typed median, left parenthesis. Now I can click on cell A2, and I see that that is entered into the formula. And as I scroll down, I see that we're going from A2 all the way up to A11. Once I've highlighted the cell range that I want, again, I need to close this formula off with a right parenthesis. And now I click enter, and we can see that the median of this data set, the midpoint, is 6.8. For the mode, this would not be too difficult to identify without any technology. In this case, we don't have that many values and they're already sorted for us. But if you had a really large data set and the values weren't sorted, it might not be so easy to identify the mode. So to find the mode, we're going to begin with an equal sign. The function is called mode. We have a left parenthesis, and then we click and highlight cells A2 to A11, and then we close off the function with a right parenthesis. And we can see that the mode, as we would expect, is 7.1 because that is the value that occurs most frequently in the data set. And lastly, for the standard deviation here, we need to be a little careful. So the formula to calculate standard deviation is different depending on whether that data is from a sample or whether that data is from a population. And so to take into account that there are similar but different formulas to calculate standard deviations for samples and populations, Google Sheets has two different, or more than two, but there are different standard deviation functions that we would need to use for a sample or a population. So in this case, we had a sample of 10 lizards. So we would want to calculate the standard deviation for a sample. So that function is equals stdev, and you can see that we've got a number of options below, and the one that we want is the standard deviation for a sample, which in Excel, as you can see in the notes, means we put a .s at the end. In Google Sheets, it's going to be a different formula. In this case, we just put the stdev, and there's no .s. There's no anything, so that's it. So we used the stdev, we put a left parenthesis, and then we highlight the cell range A2 to A11. And there we get our standard deviation is 0.5755. If you had a large population data set and you wanted to calculate the standard deviation, you would type STDEV P. So there would be no dot with Google Sheets. So the period, the dots here, works in Excel, but in Google Sheets, if we're working with a sample, then the formula is equals STDEV. And if we are working with a population, then the formula is equals STDEV dot P, no dot P. So we end it with a P on the end. Okay, and so that's how we enter formulas into Google Sheets. And there are plenty more formulas that we'll see throughout this semester, but these are the functions that go along with the computations we've been discussing in this chapter.